My name is Ryan Jennings, and I'm the president and CEO here at the Wayne County Community Foundation. And I want to welcome everyone to this discussion about planned giving and how we here at the Community Foundation can support your planned giving in our community. The Community Foundation has been around for 32 years this year, and we're a one-stop shop for charitable giving. We have a variety of different funds, donor advised funds, scholarship funds, field of interest funds. So we're here to work with the donor based on what their passion and what they want to leave their legacy with the community. Whatever their interests are, we are here to help connect them to the nonprofits that are doing the important work on the ground. So I want to welcome my colleague here, Stephen Link, who we've been working with on building up our planned giving process and program here at the Wayne County Community Foundation. Steve began his career with Pricewaterhouse, followed by 30 years in higher education, where he served as assistant treasurer at Lehigh University and directed planned and principal giving. He was recruited to Georgetown University, where he spent 15 years in gift planning, retiring as a senior philanthropic advisor in 2021. And he joined Cornerstone to help build their private wealth clients and help them think intentionally about the role of philanthropy in their long-term financial plans, and help nonprofits like ours engage with community members who are charitably inclined. So we're working with Steve and the Cornerstone team to really dive deep into our planned giving here at the Wayne County Community Foundation to best serve our community members as they think about estate planning in the next chapter for themselves. So thank you, Steve, for being here. This webinar is being recorded. We can't see each other. The people who are participating in this, you can't see each other, but you can put in your questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of this Zoom webinar. So turning it over to you, Steve. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Ryan, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm kind of doing this single-handedly, so I'm going to share my screen, which will have the presentation on it. Please feel free to put your questions into chat, and I will periodically glance down to the bottom of the screen to see if there are questions for us. And just give me one moment here.
And I'll certainly keep an eye on the Q&A tab here as well.
Thank you. There we go. Well, this will be a test of my my coordination. So first, I just want to start with disclaimers. I am not an attorney or CPA or an investment advisor. What we discussed today are intended to be ideas to help you as you think through your own philanthropic and estate plans. And we're very happy to have conversations after the fact if you'd like to have a one-on-one conversation. But we really counsel you to talk with your professional advisors. They will know, hopefully, your situation in its totality, whereas Ryan and I may only be seeing part of what your both what your asset base is and what your concerns are. So again, we strongly encourage you to talk with your own professional advisors, your own attorney, and your own CPA, tax advisor, and financial advisor. Just some quick background information. And Ryan, if I can just ask for quick feedback, are you seeing the top screen with navigation, or are you seeing just the slide itself?
Just the slide.
Perfect. So sources and uses of giving in the United States, we thought it would be a good place to start just to give you a macro view. It's a tremendous amount of money, which may seem staggering when you look at the literally like $470 billion annually that is given to charity, and where it comes from and where it goes. A couple takeaways from this slide. Individuals are singly responsible for what goes to philanthropy. Yes, corporations have a small component at 4%, and it may seem like foundations are a non-human entity, but in many cases, foundations have been formed by very philanthropic individuals who took money of their own and transferred it into a foundation for purposes of giving it for various charitable purposes. And then the big dark blue band that you see on the left is what is given annually by individuals at $324 billion. The bequests represent what we will be talking about today, which are end-of-life gifts that people make to support the charitable organizations that are important to them. On the right-hand side, you'll see very rapidly where the assets go that are given to charity on an annual basis. Two key takeaways, and I will come back to these points as we go through the webinar today, but 80% of planned gifts are bequests. They're very straightforward. People have named a charity in their estate plans. They've named a charity as a beneficiary of a retirement account or a life insurance policy. And the last will is generally done 5 years prior to death. And that is not to discourage people from doing a will. We should all have wills. But if you don't have a will yet, you have plenty of companies. 65% of Americans never make a will. And in their minds, they may think, that that's not a big deal, but every state has a law in place that directs how your estate is distributed if you don't have a will. And I can almost guarantee you that if you look at Pennsylvania or other state in which you are legal resident law, you are not going to be entirely comfortable with how they have decided to allocate your estate assets. So I do encourage you, if you don't have a will, to please talk with an estate planner and get a will in place. That's my big sales pitch and takeaway from today. The 4 questions that frequently come up and weigh on all of us as we consider what we're going to do from a long-term planning perspective is, what will the inheritance do in terms of making a positive difference in the lives of those I love? My father passed away just 2 years ago, and I know that this is a question that he struggled with. And the other questions that we're going to cycle through this chart on equally weighed on his mind. Are those I love prepared to effectively manage my inheritance? And I'm the last of 6 children, and in my case, I know all 6 of us are very different people, and I know this particular question was challenging for my father because we all have different abilities, and there are in our family some challenging situations that necessitated not doing the same thing for everyone. What unintended consequences do I want to safeguard against? And this becomes a stumbling block for many people that I've worked with, both at Lehigh and Georgetown, holding them up from making charitable decisions because they weren't sure how to handle the family or loved one questions. And then an overarching question, if you are philanthropically minded, is what organizations are important to you or were helpful to your family? And how would you like to potentially continue the support that you have given to that organization or organizations over your lifetime? So we'll come back to these questions, but as you prepare to meet with your professional advisors, these are good questions to think about in advance so that when you sit down with them, they may very well ask you these questions. You have already considered it and have a ready response. The ways to support charity are 3 primarily. Outright giving, which many of us do on an annual basis, whether it's giving to or through the community foundation, whether it's giving to specific charities that are important to us, whether it's our faith organization, whether it's a school that we graduated from, a school that our children are going to, an entity that we see doing good work in the community. The second big lump are things called life income plans. And these are where we give principal to an organization and they make a promise back to give us income for the rest of our life or whoever we designate as the income beneficiary. And at the end of that income beneficiary's lifetime, or when they terminate their interest in it, the remainder goes to the charity to do the charitable work that's been outlined, hopefully prior to this. And then the last big area is deferred giving. And this tends to be the beneficiary designations on life insurance, on tax-deferred retirement plans, maybe a brokerage account, and certainly bequests that are included in an estate. Probably over the last few weeks, you have been inundated with messages from advisors or in the news about the Secure 2.0 and what it means for you. It is a voluminous act that Congress passed at the end of the year and the president signed into law. Today, we're only touching on the charitable related component of that. And so we wanted to reiterate, because I think there is some confusion in the general public about the ability to give from tax deferred accounts. It has been and continues to be the case that you can give to charity starting at age 70 and a half. The maximum you can give per year is 100,000. You can break that up and send it to a number of different charities, or you can send it all to one charity, or you can, if you're so inclined, you can give $10,000 if that's what you want to give away. The maximum is 100,000 in total to all of the charities that you give through this vehicle. Those gifts are not tax deductible because you didn't pay tax on the way into your tax deferred retirement plan, but you know that 100 cents on the dollar are going to work with the charities that you choose to give this funding to. The center column is about the required minimum distribution. I think a lot of people hear that, and that's what we're focused on. You are not required to take a distribution from your tax-deferred retirement accounts until age 73, and that became effective on January 1st of this year. The age will increase to age 75 in 2033 for those who are age 74. And so that's a long ways off, and you never know if Congress is going to come back and change things, but that's just to give you a picture on that. And then the other big thing that was mentioned by many organizations was this ability now with this new tax law to give funds from your tax-deferred retirement account to a life income vehicle. It's a once-in-a-lifetime provision at the moment, with a maximum $50,000 that you can put into a charitable remainder trust or a gift annuity. I'm going to offer my personal bias here. I think that this is not as great an advancement as was explained if you read articles on it. It is challenging to make a charitable trust at $50,000 effective from an administration standpoint because there are costs to running a trust. And I think it is not, in my opinion, the best way to support a charity if you care about a charity. And gift annuities are another option. There is a difference in how the income from these vehicles are treated, and I can go into more detail if there are people who are interested in that. So some cautionary tales. There are unintended consequences when you name beneficiaries on tax-deferred retirement plans, life insurance, brokerage accounts, if you are not going back and checking that the beneficiary designations are appropriate on an annual basis. Most people tend to update their wills in roughly 5-year increments or when there's a major life event, either the loss of a spouse, getting married, having a child, a death of a child, or a death of a parent. But it's really important with those, because the assets pass by the beneficiary designation, to look each year. If you're still working and your employer has an open enrollment period, it is worth each time that comes around, usually around the time we change the batteries in our smoke detectors, it is worth pausing and looking at those beneficiary designations and making sure that you don't have a deceased spouse or some other individual that you no longer wish to have the remainder benefit go to. I'm going to shift right over to the far side, which is outsmarting ourselves. I think the Secure 2.0 is an example of potentially outsmarting ourselves. We can make things so complicated, and I think that there's always the risk that when we make it too complicated, we forget about something and forget to go back and update it when Congress changes the law. So I encourage a simpler approach. Everybody has their own perspective on that. But I think if you're including an organization in your estate plans, it's good to try and keep it simple, both for your purposes as well as for the organization that you wish to benefit. Let's talk about bequests for a minute. I mentioned earlier that 80% of bequests, 80% of planned gifts are bequests. They tend to be the simplest and easiest to implement. And then the questions come up, do you do this as a percentage or do you do it as a specific amount? And I know I've seen cases in which donors have left specific amounts to charity and then divided the rest of the estate in percentage terms. There's always a risk that if the estate grows substantially or shrinks substantially, that all of a sudden the relationship between that specific dollar amount and the percentage going to other individuals will shift so that it's not proportional to what you originally intended. So I always encourage people when they're sitting down with their estate planner to put everything into percentage terms. It keeps everything relational. If your estate grows, all of the provisions grow in their dollar value, but they stay relative to one another. The second question that comes up is, what is the designation? Is your intent that what you're leaving be a permanent endowment, something that is there providing a source of funds for the charities that you care about on an annual basis? Or do you not care? Or are you more interested in seeing the funds that you leave be used right away for maximum impact? This is a very personal decision, and I don't make, I'm not making any recommendation one way or the other. I know from the community foundation standpoint, the more funds that are in endowment, it gives them an ongoing ability to meet the present and evolving needs of the community. But again, these are personal decisions. And Ryan, would you like to comment at this point, or would you like me to keep?
And we certainly don't push donors to go in one direction or another. We see value in both non-endowed and unrestricted funds. It really depends on what the goal of the money is. If they are trying to do something more time pressing or a capital project or something like that, or want their money to go to work right now, then we support that. But we also offer endowment funds that are there in perpetuity for the community. So there's value in both.
Great. A couple of additional points. One is many individuals ask for sample language for what to include in the will. And I would think, Ryan, that you have this available. People want to see it. It's helpful to look at it in advance of going in and sitting down with your attorney, just so if the attorney asks you for it, you have it handy. It's also good to have a conversation with the charities you plan to leave funds for and provide documentation to those charities so that they know what to anticipate, that you can have a mutual understanding of how these funds are to be used if it's not unrestricted, so that if there is a question about whether the funds can be used specifically as you're directing, that can be resolved ahead of time, because certainly once you've passed, it's then impossible for the charity to shift that really at all. So,
and we're more than happy to meet with donors to establish funds while they're living, and they don't even need to be seeded with money. But if we know that they want to support multiple nonprofits or a scholarship fund or a field of interest fund, and they want to get that language in an agreement with us now while they're living, with the intent that it will be seeded with money from a bequest, we're more than happy to do that and have that agreement right on record. And that way, when the bequest happens, the language in the will can be very simple, that it's a donation to this fund at the foundation, and then all of those different nonprofits or the cause of that's being supported in that fund is in the agreement.
And one particular benefit of doing it that way is if your thinking about your charitable approach shifts over your lifetime, it's simply a matter of going back to the community foundation or the charity that you're supporting and rewriting the purpose of that fund.
Exactly.
As opposed to having to go back and rewrite your will.
Exactly. So yeah, we don't charge a fee each time that the nonprofits are updated or an amendment is made to that agreement. That's correct.
All right. Life insurance. Again, I'm not a licensed life insurance broker. But these can be great charitable vehicles if you've gotten to the point in life where you purchased whole life or a policy earlier in life to take care of loved ones, children, to provide in the case of an early death, and you no longer need it, and it has a paid up value. You can give that to charity. Charity can cash in the policy or hold it until you're passing, and these become great vehicles. There is a charitable deduction for giving life insurance. It is not based on the face value of the life insurance. It's based on the, I'll call it the intrinsic value, the cash surrender value. Life insurance trust can be another great vehicle, and depending on your situation, if you are exposed to estate tax, these can become a way for the insurance to cover the taxes that are going to be due on the estate without diminishing your estate that you wish to leave for loved ones. Do's and don'ts. I would not get a new life insurance policy simply to make a gift to charity. Over the course of my 3 decades in higher education and healthcare, I have seen very few cases where a new policy intended for charity is actually successful. So that's, again, these are personal biases I'm offering, but I'm happy to have a conversation offline if you'd like more information on that. Charitable remainder trust. This CRUT is a charitable remainder unit trust. I just wanted to give you a quick example. So in this case, the donor has principal, stock, something that they're putting into a trust that is then invested separately. If you have a disproportionate holding in a given stock, but you don't want to sell it because you'll have to pay the capital gain on it, this can be a very helpful way to maximize your deduction, diversify the assets within the trust. You're getting an income stream back for your lifetime or for somebody you designate as the income beneficiary. And then at the end, it goes to the community foundation or the charity that you have named as the beneficiary of your trust. Ryan, do you want to speak to the community foundation's willingness to serve as trustee or to help with these?
So these are a pretty complex giving tool. And so we're a pretty small, lean, mean nonprofit community foundation. But we would work with a donor that was interested in doing this. We would likely work with a larger community foundation that that uses these on a more regular basis. This is something that we hope to be able to grow to have more sophisticated back end acceptance of these types of vehicles, but we haven't seen this at all thus far. But as donors become more aware of the different tools, it might be something that crosses our path, and we would work with a donor to make sure that the donation is getting where they want it to.
And of course, anyone can start a charitable trust. You can work with a bank or something like that. And if you're ready to do something like that now and the community foundation isn't ready, or you have other specifics that you would prefer to have this with a bank or trust company. There are costs, just to be aware, there are costs of administering these, which is why I said earlier that I don't recommend a $50,000 trust. I think the minimum that I would look at is $100,000 to make it cost effective. But again, that's up to you and your advisors as you're planning. So we come back to these questions, and I do see that there's some questions in the Q&A if you want to bring those up, Ryan. But what level of inheritance will make a positive difference in the lives of those I love? This varies from family to family. It varies within the family. And so I think having a conversation with your advisors about either A, what the needs are of your specific loved ones that you wish to benefit, and then maybe look at what is the best method. In one case, it may be setting up a charitable remainder trust that gives an individual income for their lifetime. And I'll be transparent here. One of my siblings has mental health issues, and it was a struggle for my parents to determine what was the best method to provide for this individual in a way that they understood they were loved equally with all of the other children. But this was to protect them, that if they were in a period where they were very down, that that their assets would not be diminished because they weren't really paying attention to what was happening. So there are many different vehicles. The charitable vehicles can be very helpful in meeting some of the needs of specific families. The question is, about the unintended consequences. Are we putting a target on the back of those we love by suddenly leaving them a large lump sum? And does that make a target based on somebody wanting to gain access to those funds? Does it always kind of create this question mark in their head? Is the person I'm dating me because of the resources they know I have? Wills are public documents. So anybody can look up a public will. If you set up a trust, that is not a public document. And so you're going to need to decide based on the totality of your estate and what you want to leave to individuals, whether you want it to be private or accessible to other people in the community. And then what organizations are important to your family. So obviously mental health organizations have been very important in my family. Meals on Wheels has been important. There are arts organizations that have been very important. And so how you choose to provide for the different charities is obviously up to you. In some cases, personally, I have charities that are important to me, but I'm not sure managerially, administratively, that they are in a position to long-term manage the funds. And so, well, I'm not in way. Go ahead.
I was going to say that leads right to a perfect question to dive more into that, Steve. The question of this individual said, we are deeply grateful to an organization that helped our family at a challenging time, but are uncertain of their long-term ability to handle a significant bequest. We're considering leaving them for the work that they do. And how do we address this? And I think that you're right on in knowing that sometimes a lump sum all at once, whether that's to an individual or an organization, can be very challenging if people don't have the tools and the sophistication to manage that in a way that a donor might feel is appropriate. And I would just say that the Community Foundation can be a great vehicle and partner in that, because not only can we accept gifts in a variety of different ways from stock to bequests, but we also can divvy that out over time in a form of an endowment or a percentage each year, so that that nonprofit isn't getting a lump sum all at once. You can have caveats of if they need it for a, roof repair or something that's unexpected, there can be some language in a fund that allows for that. But that's one way to address supporting an organization without giving a significant bequest all at once.
I'm smiling because that's almost exactly verbatim what I was going to say. In my case, I have some entities that I care very deeply about, but they've had financial challenges over the decades that I've supported them, and I am choosing to give through the local Lehigh Valley Community Foundation for their benefit, but I've also given the foundation the flexibility that if the organization ceases to exist, that the purpose of the fund continue to be available. So that in one case, it's a historic preservation organization, and I don't know what the future will bring for them, but I still believe historic preservation is important. And so the Community Foundation leadership, hopefully 30 or 40 years down the road, will have people who know what the needs are for historic preservation at that time and can redirect those funds if the organization that I'm specifically naming either ceases to exist, or the feeling of the foundation leadership is that they are not, this is not putting good money to work, that it would be better to shift the usage.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Another question here is, we support a number of small organizations in the area and some outside of the area. We'd like to continue to do this after our passing. And is there an easy way to do this without complicating our wills? And that gets back again to establishing a fund while you're living. Even if there isn't money in it, you can have that fund agreement on file with a community foundation. And that way you can update that that agreement as much as you need to, and then the will would just say a percentage that's going to this fund at the community foundation. So it doesn't have to be a complicated or a scheduled meeting with the lawyer each time that you want to add a nonprofit or take them off of that list, or change the percentage for each. It can just be a document to a community foundation or a meeting with the community foundation to update that. So that's a great way that you can continue giving your annual gifts to nonprofits after you're no longer here, but your money can still continue to support that.
If I can interject one second, I just finished a program called the Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy, and part of my study group included estate planners, legal estate planner, and they pointed out something that I was not aware of, and that is that today, because the statutes change so frequently, most estate planning attorneys do not go back to the last will and simply update it. They start with the current statutes and they add to it. So we can't really count on our attorneys to prompt us about which charities to bring forward from the last will. So it's good to keep a list of the charities that are important to you. And to Ryan's point, using the community foundation is an easy way to have the charities, the most current list of charities, set up with them. And all your will has to do is say, I am directing these funds to the community foundation as directed in my most recent agreement with them, or something to that effect.
Yep. Wonderful.
Any other questions?
I think you got to one of them. And then one last one. I've always managed our family finances, and my spouse is worried about managing them should I pass away first. How do we plan now to relieve this longer term worry? And I think you got to this a little bit, but maybe to circle back to wrap that question up, Steve.
Sure. Again, I'm not an attorney or a financial advisor, but there are a couple of different vehicles that are out there that can help address this, whether it's a spouse who isn't interested or a spouse who doesn't have the background and how to do this effectively. You can hire a bank or trust company to be a trustee for them. You can set up a charitable remainder trust, which is being professionally managed, and they will get an income stream from that. And then at the end, it goes to the charities that you wish to benefit. You can take a multi-point approach and put part with a bank or trust company in an outright trust for that individual, and then have it at the end pour out to, so if you're doing this for your spouse, pour out to your children or grandchildren. And you can hedge that by doing part of it as a charitable remainder trust to take care of the charitable things that you and your spouse wish to do. So I think those
Wonderful.
are the primary ways to address that. And it's a real thing. You know, as couples, as partners, we frequently take on responsibility for different things. And then the world has gotten to be a complicated place. And, you know, staying on top of investments, as we've seen over just the last 2 years, how wildly the markets can fluctuate. I understand a spouse who doesn't spend time in this area being uncomfortable taking that responsibility on.
Yeah, and I think really the message that we're trying to get across today is that what you started with here is that many people don't have a will, and you're in good company in that. But with that, the state of Pennsylvania does have a will structure for you, and it doesn't include nonprofit support in that. And many people give to varieties of different nonprofits, whether that's a little league team to the library to music and culture programs in our community. And should that be something you want to be able to leave a legacy with, the best thing is to start planning while you're living, because that's not going to be a consideration in the state approved will. So we're just trying to make that a culture of
Intentionality.
Intentionality. I like that. A culture of intentionality. Yeah. And thinking about it now, whether that's uncomfortable or not, we have to just start talking about it. And we here at the Community Foundation are here as a resource to talk about the different ways to give to charity. We do have a legacy society here, the O'Neill Society, that will be having some in-person gatherings this year with people that have chosen the Community Foundation or any of the funds that we manage as something that they will be leaving a piece of their estate with, whether that's a life insurance policy or part of their will or anything in between. So we do encourage this culture of intentionality, as Steve has coined it, here at the Community Foundation, and would love more members of that society and folks that think charitably as part of their legacy planning.
And one addition to that is just educating the next generation. So I know, and I've spoken with people who are concerned about whether their children understand the importance of philanthropy and have experience, practice doing it. And community foundations are a great resource for giving smaller opportunities for the next generation to experience philanthropy in a way that they can become more and more comfortable with it.
That's exactly right. Yeah, they can be part of a committee to choose a grant or a scholarship and be part of that with the support of our staff.
Great. So I do want to close because I'm required to do this by my firm. This is not legal, tax, or investment counsel. We strongly encourage you to find, either by talking with your friends, talking with the Community Foundation, find professional advisors that you are comfortable with, that can be a steady source of information for you over time as your thinking evolves on your estate plans. And this is the fine disclosure information, but I'm also required to share that as well.
And a reminder, this will be recorded, so we'll have that up on our website, and we'll share that with our newsletter list as well. So you can refer to it again. Thank you again for your patience as we navigated some troubleshooting with the technology today. And please let me know here at the foundation if you have any questions. Our website is waynefoundation.org, and you can find all of our contact information there. Thank you, Steve, for being with us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I look forward to being with you again sometime.
Thank you. Stay well.
Bye-bye.